Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So today once again, we're going to be looking at some details from the book Dawn of Rebellion. In my last video, and I do recommend you go check it out, we looked at some new reveals for the galactic map, for the Mandalorian, and Star Wars Andor. There are some really awesome details in this book. However, they seem to have made a mistake, or at least I think they did. And this could just be a deliberate goof. They do this all the time in reference books, even before Disney. There were tons in the prequel trilogy guides as well. So there I was going through chapter 2, titled The Dark Times. There's a lot of focus, as you would imagine, on the Kenobi show, and I was looking at the Inquisitors. And as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of the Inquisitors. I love Star Wars Rebels, Jedi Fallen Order, the comics, and so naturally, I'm quite invested in a lot of these characters. The Kenobi show adapted the Grand Inquisitor and the fifth brother for live action, but they also gave us the fourth sister, and of course the third sister, also known as Reva. Reva had a redemption arc at the end, but in this book, they do expand on her backstory and give us some insight across 2 pages as to her weaponry, her survival of Order 66, her fighting combat style, and more. But there's a bit of a mistake, and I went back to rewatch Obi-Wan Kenobi episode 1 just to see if I'd misremembered, but I hadn't. So under the section Reva's weapons, after they talk about her lightsaber, they mention throwing knives. And in my head, I was thinking, well yeah, in the first episode, when the Inquisitors were on Tatooine to suss out Nari, she took a knife from one of the patron's plates, he was eating his lunch, and then she threw it. And the important bit here is that the knife was not hers, but in this description they say this: Reva forges her own knives, mistrustful of Imperials or droids to take the care and skill she believes is required to craft the weapons. Okay, so maybe she does, in her spare time, craft knives. But the one shown in the picture here, the one from the first episode, that was not her knife. Now as I say, before I jump to the conclusion that this is a mistake, it could be the case that Reva planted it there before. Maybe the Grand Inquisitor doesn't allow her to carry them round, so she planted it in the saloon. I doubt it though. That guy was using it to eat with. It was an eating knife. The biggest guidebook released just before this one was Star Wars Timelines, which I covered around the time of Mando Season 3, and that book had a ton of factual errors, inconsistencies, and a few things that made us fans take a step back and say, well that can't be true. In that book it was about Mando. In this one, it's the Kenobi show. Even Wikipedia have caught this, and they wrote it correctly in their article about Reva. Here's what they say. In 9 BBY, the third sister was dispatched to the desert planet of Tatooine alongside the Grand Inquisitor and the fifth brother, tasked with locating the Jedi Nari. While her superior attempted to intimidate the locals in a saloon, the impatient Reva interrupted him by throwing a knife at the saloon owner. Before it could kill the owner, Nari, who was in the saloon, caught it with the Force. The third sister tried to cut him down with a lightsaber, only to be stopped from doing so by the invisible grip of the Grand Inquisitor, who instead wanted him alive for interrogation, allowing Nari to escape. And I can't see any mention in their article about Reva forging and using her own knives in that scenario. I mean, technically, they are right in saying it was one of Reva's weapons in the context of the show, but the one she uses in Obi-Wan Part 1 is not one she made or brought with her. So staying on the Reva section of this book, there are some fascinating reveals. For example, she's 22, her homeworld is unknown, Reva is proficient with many weapons, but like all Inquisitors, she wields a double-bladed spinning lightsaber that she customized to complement her fighting style. And then they go on to mention Jar Kai. We've seen this with Kelleran Beck, Asajj Ventress, Ahsoka Tano. They note that Reva is naturally ambidextrous. She's been drawn to the art of Jar Kai since she was a young Jedi. Under the tutelage of the Grand Inquisitor, Reva perfected her Jar Kai skills and customizes her Inquisitor hilt to split in half. And they also reveal where she got her Kyber crystal from. The Kyber powering the third sister's lightsaber once belonged to a Jedi lost to the Purge, and Reva bled them herself. And they also tell us, before defecting, so during her time as an Inquisitor, she did successfully hunt down other Jedi before her encounters with Kenobi. She went to planets including Pantora, Valo, Soraya, which is where Ki-Adi-Mundi is from, Bos Pitti, and Alsakan. Given that she survived I'm curious what's next for her journey, when we're gonna see her again. I know she's not a very popular character, a lot of fans thought she was terribly written. What do you think they'll do with her? Let me know down below. So if we move on to the section about Obi-Wan himself, there's a lot of cool stuff here, notably his mindset during this time. There are 2 specific paragraphs, which are of note, the one about him being a Jedi incognito, and the one titled Hardship and Hope, how he is still haunted by the horrific events of the Clone Wars. But they do confirm he still has kept to his meditations, the ones Yoda taught him. Yoda, at the end of episode 3, said he would help him commune with his old master. And by the end of Kenobi, we do see Qui-Gon's Force ghost, once Obi-Wan has reconnected himself with the Force, tapped back into it. But I still do prefer the way this was handled in the Kenobi Legends book. I feel as though the Kenobi show lacked any significant connections to Revenge of the Sith. There were some with the fights with Vader, but the Legends book lets you know they're connecting the two. This new book, Dawn of Rebellion, tries to do that to some extent. As I say, they mention the meditations that Yoda taught him, they mention the Clone Wars, the flashbacks, but they could have done more with that. I know I'm often one who says we don't always need fan service, but I feel as though this was the show to do that. They did give us an intro at the start of episode 1, where it was just scenes from the prequel trilogy, a catch-up so to speak. But what John Jackson Miller does in the book, before Part 1 Oasis, is he gives us a prologue of Obi-Wan's last message before he takes up the moniker of Ben. It's the type of POV that the Kenobi show needed at the start, closing the previous chapter and introducing the new one. John Jackson Miller, throughout his wonderful novel, always has George Lucas's episodes 1 to 6 in the back of his mind. There's a poetry to acknowledging how the galaxy will eventually need a new hope, how he's going to do everything to protect Luke. Parallels between Luke's upbringing, Anakin's upbringing. He mentions the first time he came to Tatooine in The Phantom Menace, and how one time he was taking a kid away from there, but this time he's bringing the son of that very boy back to the same world. It's a beautiful intro. He mentions Polis Massa, talking to Bail and Yoda, and it's a closing of a chapter from the Clone Wars onto a new and darker one in the desert. There are parallels to what's said in Star Wars Rebels, with his speech from the temple in the Holocron, but I digress. Those are some more reveals from the new Dawn of Rebellion book. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.